Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you're all going to have a good day today. Select card today, I would say. You know, not too many runners. Hopefully it's not going to be too difficult to find the winners. A little bit about myself. For those who don't know me, my name's Andrew Thornton. I've been a professional jump jockey now for, I think this is my 21st season. I'm still in one piece, just. I've had, well, as a jump jockey, as you probably know, we all take our fair share of falls and what have you. I've had 9 operations so far, 16 broken bones. I've 4 different surgeons' numbers on my mobile, so if anybody's struggling with anything from a broken jaw, from there, I've got 4 screws and a plate in there, to broken left arm, 1 plate, 17 screws. Probably one of the worst injuries was back in '97, which was one of my best seasons. When it was '97-'98, it was the end of '98 season. I'd won the Gold Cup on Cool Dawn, May the 4th, Fontwell, Bank Holiday Monday, 4:10, roughly. And I was laid at the back of an open ditch. The horse fell, was laid on top of me, and I had to get pulled off. There was 2 of St John's Ambulance people down there. And there was the ground staff as well, which was sat round obviously round the fence. Anyway, they dragged me from underneath the horse. He was just winded. Pulled me from out, and I'm sat on the floor, and I'm leant against one, and the other's looking at me, and she said, "Oh dear, are you all right?" I said, "I think I've broken my leg." Oh, she said, "Look on the bright side, you might not have done." I said, "Well, I wasn't pigeon-toed before, but I am now." My left leg was literally like that, and my right leg was keeping the left leg up, so enjoy your pate while looks very meaty. So yeah, so that was the, anyway, cut a long story short, they wheeled me off to Chichester Hospital. There was about 4 or 5 lads came in. There was Philip Hyde, AP McCoy came in to see how I was, and when they know somebody's going to be off injured and they're not going to be off for a while, they came in with a McDonald's and cans of Coke and chocolate, and, you know, because you're going to be you may as well get stuck into this and enjoy it while you're going to be off, because you're going to be off for a while. It transpired I had an operation. They wheeled me, got me from Chichester Hospital. It was an old army hospital then, and you just wouldn't want to be there. So they got me from there up to the Ridgeway, which has been jump jockeys, but all have to have private medical cover. So got me up there, got me down for an operation, and Mike Foy was the surgeon. 2 plates and 17 screws. Broke the fibula, tibia and ankle, and it was a real mess. But thanks to him, he got back. I was back in the saddle and back on a race course in exactly 4.5 months.
Wow.
Which, once when you've 6 weeks no mobility, and then it's partial weight bearing, and then it's getting the swimming pool, and it's all the rehab. That's from a jump jockey's point of view, that's the hardest thing. Getting back in the saddle, and back in 4.5 months, and everything went well till Christmas. And unfortunately, where the screws were around the ankle, and obviously when you're riding, you're putting an awful lot of pressure through your body, and where we grip, you grip with your ankles and your calves. Your legs are used as like shock absorbers, basically. So the lads, when they're going around, most of them will be like that. They won't be too far in like the flat jockeys are. But unfortunately for me, where you were, it kept on rubbing the screw. And unfortunately for me, I had a good Christmas. I had 4 winners at Christmas, which included French Holly, which was probably the best hurdle I ever rode. And I was feeling absolutely terrible waking up that morning. Felt ill, I was sweating, I was in a cold sweat. Anyway, the following day at Thornton, I had 1 ride, and they had to wheel me back to the hospital. I got an infection in my left leg. Had to have the plate, 17 screws removed. Had to scrape the bone to get all the infection out, and I was out for another 6 weeks. So that was, again, it's the rehab from a jockey's point of view, which is the hardest part to get back from. So, but since then we've been pretty lucky. We had a few injuries here and there. Dislocated a right shoulder at I think it was about the 8th of February 2008 to Kempton. A horse fell at the back of the 3rd last at Kempton. A horse called Soulard of John Spearings, and I popped my right shoulder out. Got me in the ambulance. Ambulance driver went 3 times round the car park at Kempton, couldn't find his way out. Headed down the M3. I'm on the gas and air. I'm in an awful lot of pain. A lot more pain than when I broke my leg because dislocated shoulder and anyway, heading down the M3. Can smell a burning sensation. I smelled something burning when I was on the gas and air. So I've taken the mask off and I said, "Excuse me, mate." I said, "I think I've run out of gas and air. Can you get me some more?" He says, "No, you haven't." He says, "The turbo's gone on the ambulance. We're going to have to pull over." So pulled me over onto hard shoulder on the M3 heading towards Chertsey on the M25. So sat in the ambulance. He said, sorry sir, but for health and safety reasons we're going to have to get you out of the ambulance. Because of obviously the fear of it going up. So they put me on the hard shoulder, on the stretcher. So you've got a jump jockey on a stretcher, top taken off, feet poking out the bottom. It's an hour and a half after the last race. Got all the lads coming home from the course, haven't you? Tooting the horns, because I'm parked on the side of the hard shoulder. Who else is going to be parked on the side of the hard shoulder looking like this? So they're tooting the horns. So that goes by. The next thing I hear the ambulance come in and I'm thinking, oh, thank God for that. The worst thing is it's going the wrong way down the M3, isn't it? It's heading towards Kempton. So I have to go down to Sunbury Junction, turn around, come back for me, pulled up, and I'm thinking, thank God for that. Sorry, Mr. Thornton, but that stretcher doesn't fit in that ambulance. So with a dislocated shoulder, gas and air, got to get myself off one stretcher onto another stretcher, get me back in the ambulance, get me off to the hospital. Anyway, it transpired I didn't just dislocate the shoulder, I pulled every single muscle, ligament and tendon off the bone for the right shoulder. 4 days later, headed up to Cardiff to see a guy called Jeff Graham, who is a great advert for surgeons. He put together 14 of the 21 Welsh rugby team with shoulder injuries, so he comes well recommended. And had 8 hooks inserted into the shoulder, and every single muscle, ligament and tendon had to be pulled back on and reattached. And that was probably the worst injury, the most painful injury, was 7.5 months rehab. To get the shoulder from being there, because I popped the shoulder out the back, not out the front, and so I had to be in a mechanism which held your shoulder out there, rather than having it there, when it comes out the front, it was out there, and had to sleep with it as well. So you're in bed, like this, and the worst thing is when you've done your shoulder, you have a frozen shoulder, because it's been set in place for 6.5 weeks. So you've got to get literally, you could only do that to keep it so you didn't get a frozen elbow. You just keep moving the hand round and around. You used to carry an orange ball around to keep just the circulation going. So you had to literally get the shoulder from there to get it all the way up to, and get up to about there now. But they said you've got to treat it like a rusty gate. Rusty gate, you can't just suddenly open it because everything just would go. You just got to keep nagging it.
You thought about changing your occupation?
Is it from a jump jockey's point of view? If you want to think about changing the occupation, the time is now to give up. As soon as you think about, when you have a fall as a jump jockey, the first thing you're thinking when you're laid on the floor is, number one, how long is it going to take me to get back? And number two, who's going to nick me rides? So as soon as you stop thinking about it, when you're laid on the floor, and it hasn't happened to me yet, touch wood, but as soon as you're laid on the floor thinking, I've had enough of this, that's the time to hang the boots up. And I would think it's probably exactly the same when you're boxing as well. As soon as you're laid on that floor and you're thinking, I don't want to get up, I've had enough of this. The first thing you think of when the surgeon tells you you're going to be off for 3 months, you think I can get back in 2. You've got to keep pushing yourself. Because it's funny enough, when you're self-employed, it's a great incentive to get back when you're not getting paid. A great incentive to get back a little bit quicker. But as you've probably seen at the moment, Tony McCoy's on the sidelines at the moment. And I wasn't at Worcester when he had a nasty fall at Worcester. But I think he had 10 days off. And he came back and he rode at Huntingdon. And he came back, and his first day back, he had 3 winners. 3 rides, 3 winners. And he didn't have to move on one of them. They literally won doing cartwheels. And the following day, he rode at Wetherby. And he won on a horse of John Joe O'Neill's called Goodwood Starlight. Won I think it was the handicap hurdle. And unfortunately for him, he had to pick up his stick after the last hurdle. He had to give it a smash. And what he had done, he cracked his collarbone. And as soon as he picked his stick up and he gave it a crack, collarbone just went bing. Just to rub salt into the wound, on the same day, he missed a walkover and another 2 winners. So if he hadn't had to pick his stick up, he'd have probably been all right, and he probably would have ridden the other 3 as well, and he might have got by, because the whole thing was that it was just the picking up the stick and hitting in that position. So since then, I think he rode another day with a broken collarbone, and since then he's been off for, I think it's about 2.5 weeks now. But if he'd given it what you should do for a collarbone, is you've given it 3 weeks straight away, he'd have been all right. But the fact he only gave it 10 days, it just wasn't long enough. So,
I think, did doctor see him trying to get his colours on?
Yeah, I was in there. He literally, you could see the collarbone was literally, you could see it had come, it was raised and it was just all swollen. Yeah. I mean, it broke his heart to see a walkover when he can't get on one, just cantering down to the last fence and come back again. That's the thing. We all try and push ourselves as hard as we can, and when you're a little bit more of a senior jockey, you can probably push the boundaries that little bit more and keep things quiet with the doctors. Because from a riding point of view, as long as your head's all right, if you can go through the pain, then you can ride. Because what you don't realise is there's an awful lot of lads in the weighing room who you're riding with injuries day in, day out. I had a fall at Ascot there 3 weeks ago, and it fell on the bend, turning out the back straight, and I got thrown into the inside rail, one of those plastic rails down there. But what you don't see, they look plastic, but there is a metal spike about that long, which goes up the plastic rails, and it hit me flush down there, and I didn't break any ribs, because I went for a CT scan, didn't break any ribs, but I'd done the little muscles between the ribs, and even now, coughing and sneezing, it's still very painful, because what I've done is I've bruised the bone down there. But when you know you haven't broken anything, it's a case of take the painkillers and go through. You just got to go through the pain barrier. And when you're in a finish, it's take a deep breath and you just got to go through the pain. So, but we have a physio. In the last 10 years, there is a physio at every single racecourse in the country now, which makes a big difference, because you can manage those little injuries as you're going along. The lads of the yesteryear, your Norman Williamsons, your Lorcan Wyers, your Mark Dwyers, your household names, Richard Dunwoody, those type of lads, they got to about 34, 35, and they couldn't take any more, because then you didn't have physios at the racecourse. But now you've got Richard Johnson, Tony McCoy, Noel Feely, Brian Harding, myself. We're knocking on 40. I mean, that is the reason why these lads are riding that much longer. And you'll see the lads going around nowadays. AP McCoy rides completely different to how he used to ride when he was riding for Martin Pike, which was out from the front, flat to the boards. My horse is fitter than yours. I've got the best jockey on board. He's the fittest jockey. But when you see him riding for John Joe Neal now, and he rides completely differently. And also the horses that he rides are completely different animals. Because going back then, there never used to be a lot of pace in the race. They went a lot steadier. Whereas Martin Pike probably changed that. My horse is the fittest. It will go through the pain barrier and it will keep galloping. Whereas now, in the races, you see there's very rarely is there no pace in the race. So you can then ride a completely different race. You can drop them in, and you see AP McCoy. When you get older, you start to ride an awful lot more up here. And you see Brian Harding riding now. He's riding better than ever. He's riding good horses, full of confidence. He's 42 years old. He should know better. He should know better, but he's riding better than ever. And I mean, Richard Johnson, look at the weekend he's had. Cheltenham, 3 days at Cheltenham, absolutely phenomenal. And he's not riding like a man of 38. He's more like a man of 28. But it's so much more up there. And he's probably a lot better jockey now than he was 10 years ago. Because, Richard Johnson 10 years ago, you'd be throwing them down to the last hurdle and you'd be going down like this with you hear a lot of punters from that point of view.
He's been champion jockey a few times every time to be from McCoy, wasn't it?
Absolutely. He's finished second to AP McCoy on 14 occasions.
Yeah.
And he's ridden 100 winners for the last, I think it's 17 years, every single season. And in that time, he's been pretty lucky with injuries, but he has had 2 broken legs and still managed to ride 100 winners. You know, I think he came back with less than 3 months with a broken leg. You know, so, but it's what you put yourself through. There's a downside to every sport. Unfortunately, it's often not the falls that you have. It's what's coming behind you. AP's fall, it wasn't the fall itself. It was the horse that was galloping behind him, stood on him. And same with Jason Maguire before Cheltenham last year at Stratford. He came off the horse at the last hurdle down the back. It wasn't the fall. The horse behind him stood straight on him and literally cut his liver in half. And you know, he was. A lot of people don't know, but he was in a bad way. He was in intensive care for 48 hours. He was in quite a bad way. And luckily, on the day, there happened to be an air ambulance there, which got him to the hospital that bit quicker. But you don't like to think of what the consequences might be. Broke his sternum as well. Yeah. Straight down the middle, liver, couple of ribs. Apart from that was alright.
Is that why you're always at the back, Andrew? So no one will run over you?
I wouldn't quite go that far, yeah. So, we'll try not to be at the back today.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I've been lucky. I've had 16 broken bones, 9 operations, and I'm on 967 winners so far. I'm trying to get to 1,000.
There's only 972.
I know, I thought it was
You got it wrong.
972.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
Giving
I wish
you
I was.
5 more there.
So, but you know, I'd like to get to 1,000. I think there's only about 15 jump jockeys who've got to 1,000 winners so far. So, whether they're going to have to get a Zimmer frame out to get me into the paddock by the time we get there, I don't know. But hopefully, about this time next year, I'd like to think we could maybe be there. I'd say if I could have Tony McCoy's rides in August, I'd be there. You know? So, but yeah, I would think by the sounds of it, he's going to be back by the Hennessy meet next weekend. That's his plan. That's his plan. So, and as it happened, he probably hasn't missed an awful lot while he's been off. John Joe's horses hasn't been too many winners. He's going through a bit of a quiet spell at the moment. But you can't have a summer that he's had, and the horses can't keep on going, because what happens is you get new horses coming in the yard, and when they're coming over from Ireland and France and different places, they bring over different bugs, and yes, they'll have isolation yards, but still they can get the little odd cough and cold here and there, and so it just sometimes takes a little bit of time.
Why do you think it is, Andrew, that like a stable can like have a period when they can't have a winner,
yeah.
and then they have a period when they can't have a loser?
But it's a bit like the fact what I mentioned there, that horses just get a few coughs and colds, and when one gets it, and you've got, what you remember is bits are going in the mouths, and the infection gets carried around very, very quickly. And especially at this time of year, when the weather's a bit damp, and you often get, why do we all have flu? A lot of people have flu injections at this time of year to try and get you through the winter. And a lot of horses are sort of in the same boat as well. But like Philip Hobbs's, they can't do any wrong at the moment.
No.
Can't do any wrong. Whereas John Joe's are a little bit quiet. There's a few winning, you know, but not the amount of winners that he was having before. And Paul Nichols's are now in good form. But you'll find that there's patterns through the year where certain trainers, horses run well and certain don't. And you'll find now that I wouldn't want to Peter Bowens from now till about next April. But again, where's all the it gets a bit scientific. Well, where's all the air coming from? It's coming from the Atlantic, isn't it? Yeah. And what air's out there at the moment? It's damp, it's dreary, it's miserable. But you get to April time and it's fresh and it's warmer weather, and he gets it first. So I think a lot of that has to do with it. And Venetia Williams's horses love the soft ground. And you might say, why do they love the soft ground? Well, they train at home with about that much mud, and the gallop's very, very deep. Hence why her horses get used to soft ground, whereas a lot of yards nowadays train on the synthetic surface of your Wolverhamptons and your Southalls and so they don't get used to the deep ground, whereas hers, they thrive in the deep ground. And obviously working in the deep ground at home, they have to work harder, and they're maybe that little bit fitter. So that's why her horses like soft ground. And Nicky Henderson's probably, his horses don't really like the sticky, horrible conditions. And the type of horses he buys as well, a little bit finer, they're very, very good movers. So you get what you pay for. So hopefully mine goes well today. So we'll see.
We're depending on it.
Depending on it. That's probably my most used saddle. Anything from about 11 stone 2 below. Anything from 11 stone 2 to 10 stone 4. That saddle will get used. Today, stripped I'm 10-10, which is about my 10-9, 10-10 I sit at on a day-to-day basis. So you're looking for about £3 to be able to do the weight. Heavy boots, I've got a set of light boots as well, which you use. That, as it is there, weighs less than £1. So by the time you finish today, you'll have probably eaten a couple of these.
You've got a lighter one than that?
No, that is the lightest one I have. The flat lads will have smaller saddles than that. You know, Richard Hughes' saddle is probably half the size of that. You know, when you think he's only an inch smaller than me, and he does 8 stone 7, probably 8 stone 9 on a regular basis, which they don't eat an awful lot. Yeah.
What do you eat?
What do I eat pretty healthy. It's pretty much a balanced diet. Plenty of vegetables, chicken, fish last night, plenty of vegetables, and try and stay off the carbs, the bread and the potatoes, which everybody likes. It's just you've just got to be disciplined about it. From a jockey's point of view, you can't stay on a diet for 12 months of the year. It will drive you nuts. So you've got to allow yourself if I haven't got a light weight in tomorrow or the day after,